Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
What is the creepiest / most disturbing internet rabbit hole you've gone down, and why? 1. I bought my brother a taser from Amazon for his birthday one time. Looking at some of the questions, there was one asking if it hurt. The answer went something like, "It does not. I've tossed myself in the neck 30 times. Extremely interested in this. I went to his Amazon profile where you can see what else he has reviewed, and he reviewed a katana and stuff like that of similar nature. Still interested, so I typed his name into Facebook and found a profile with a picture of him holding his katana. The first thing I noticed is that he's from my city. Second thing is there are so many people posting to his Facebook saying he's the devil and they can't believe what he'd done and that they hope he roots and stuff like that. Extremely interested at this point. I googled his name and found news articles that he stabbed a guy in the chest in his apartment with a katana. Then fled and was later caught by the police. Turns out he was very delusional and really needed help. He's now in jail, and according to the article looks like he is getting the help he needs. It was a very wild ride just looking at the stupid questions people ask about products on Amazon. 2. There's a doc called The Bridge, which captured 23 of the 24 suicides from the Golden Gate Bridge in SF in 2004. Apparently The Bridge is a wildly popular suicide site. By 2004, there had been more than 1,200 suicides, with a 98% death rate. Anyway, it's really dark and sent me on a little research expedition into suicides. Apparently, the 2% that survive say they instantly regretted jumping midair. And that starts to make you think about suicides and how much pain people are in to take that step, and yet there is a shock of clarity once they've done the irreversible. Just reading about that desperation and sadness triggered so much in me, I really can't go down those rabbit holes anymore. 3. There's this guy on Facebook, I wish I could remember his name, but he married his doll and has photos together of them everywhere. At first I thought it was a troll account, but the more I looked the creepier it got. The dates on the photos dated back years and he showed off his doll's wardrobe and all the possessions he had of hers, and then, there were multiple friend accounts of different dolls on his page that's completely public. But genuinely the weirdest part to me was that he lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Like, imagine if someone accidentally ended up there. For the most heartbreaking and terrifying technical dive story I can remember is about a wreck dive, how horrifically dangerous it is and why, deep, pitch dark, constricted, etc. A father and son team were diving a U-boat wreck off the coast of NJ together and the son was trapped by debris. His father obviously did everything he could to free him, and succeeded, but it resulted in both of them going way past their dive time, so they shot to the surface instead of decompressing from a wreck that was 70 m down. By the time they reached the surface they both obviously had decompression sickness. The father never regained consciousness, but the son was talking and aware before he passed away as well. It's just haunting. I can't imagine having to make this sort of series of choices, especially with the life of a family member on the line. Which is why I will never dive into anything, ever, in my life. 5. A sci-fi timeline PDF I found a while back. I think it was on the World Building sub. It was a timeline of humanity that started off relatively normally, detailing human evolution as they colonized Mars and the stars beyond. It descended into body horror when they came into contact with an advanced race that for some reason I forget genes mudded the majority of humans into non-sentient species and seeded them across the galaxy. It then went into great detail with each of these species separately and their climb back to sentience. It ended with one of the new humans that evolved back to sentience standing beside an original human skull. I haven't been able to find it since, but it got dark. 6. Deaths on Mount Everest and how a lot of the bodies are still up there. This was a wiki rabbit hole I fell into after listening to the Casefile episode on David Sharp. Read not only about him but also Green Boots, this couple that got separated, etc. Due to the extremely cold temperatures, the bodies aren't that decomposed, so they still look recent even though it's been years or decades. It's creepy and sad. Some bodies have been there so long they are used as markers for climbers. What is also sad is that there have been efforts to remove them, but doing so is extremely dangerous because of the altitude, temperatures, and uneven ground. People have died trying it in the past. Not sure if they've managed to succeed since I last read about it in 2018. 7. Not really creepy, more mentally challenging. It all started with me watching some random liminal space video with some slow, mildly distorted music, then decided to go down the comments section and stumbled upon some context about the music used. It was taken from Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker, an album about the experience of suffering from Alzheimer's. Of course, I searched it up and listened to the full 6-hour album in one sitting, listening to 20s pop, progressing to music with the reverb tone really high, drone sounds and a depressing ending. In that time, I was experiencing actual anxiety and developing the fear of forgetting. I was not mentally ready for Idiot, an interesting community, though everyone felt the same way as I did about the masterpiece. 8. I was a lurker in a car forum for many years. This was probably 8 or so years ago. One time someone posted a thread that linked to an insurance, auto, website that resold accident cars to reclaim money. There was a whole category of cars labeled biohazard, and these are the cars that end up with body fluids in them, giant stuffs from being in an accident, drive-by shootings with blood everywhere, even suicide cars with brains blasted on the roof. These auto auctions don't want to clean that mess up, so they will sell the cars cheap. Some people in the forum even found news articles that corresponded with the murder/accident/etc. in a particular car. It was incredibly creepy. But I admittedly spent hours and hours sometimes looking through these disgusting, tragic cars. 9. This isn't really that great of an answer as it's the first thing that comes to mind, but I watched a lot of To Catch a Predator footage early in COVID. Those people are disgusting, and it's so weird to see some plain-ass man be otherwise normal seeming, but have disgusting desires, and then turn into a lying machine when they get caught. That moment when someone realizes they are exposed, millions of people are going to know, and they are also going to lose their career/job, family, friends, etc. Is just an overly complex, interesting, and gross human reaction to see. 10. I wish I remember his name. Years ago, I watched a video on YouTube of Elvis's last phone call which was recorded. In the comments there was this guy who had claimed to know Elvis personally and who went on about how he was in his final days. I grew very suspicious. I clicked his YouTube channel and found more comments on other dead celebrity videos of him claiming to be a family friend. I searched this guy's name and found his weird SAS website. It was the most bizarre stuff I've ever seen. It was full of long posts about how this guy was a lead designer and architect in some important buildings worldwide. It also chronicled all of his celebrity friends. Guy was definitely schizophrenic, I assume. Finding his website was just so odd, it's like looking into a portal into his mind. Since then, I've become extremely interested in schizophrenia and I've happened to stumble upon others who seem to have it. This one guy on LinkedIn is a writer. He goes on these rambles on his LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter about a girl who was killed. But his sentences are all circular, if that makes sense. Almost like talking with someone with dementia who keeps repeating the same thing over and over. Except this guy has been doing the same thing for years. Just lost in a possible fairy tale. The mind is weird. 11. I watched Start a little while ago and I always loved the scene where they infiltrated the Winter Fortress. That had me thinking about those Hydra/James Bond sequel villain lairs up high in the snowy mountains, which I thought were a complete fantasy. That is until I did lots of searching and asking around and slowly but surely learned that people with lots of money and connections can get away with pretty much anything on this planet, like building a lavish bunker on the side of a mountain in the Swiss Alps, which I mistakenly thought were sacred and untouchable. Laws are arbitrary when the price is right. These lavish bunkers are so well hidden and impossible to find that 99.9% of people won't ever know about their existence. Those that do are paid well to keep quiet. I even heard about one with a retractable helipad, so the entrance is essentially covered in snow and impossible to see, even from satellites. As someone who lives to explore, especially remote places, I naturally wanted to figure out how I could uncover the secret for myself. But digging more just led me to secretive people who would never show any clues and potentially jeopardize a location. It gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about the power the 0.001% truly has and how no one really knows what they are doing behind closed doors. Money buys them their own set of rules. Those who know don't talk, those who talk don't know. 10 years or so ago, I went through a phase of regularly reading a martial arts forum, maybe Bushido or similar, the kind where people investigated/outed frauds or unsavory characters in martial arts. Well, one day I came across an old thread consisting of a video and hundreds of pages of comments. I can't remember the OP title, but the video looked like it was shot on an 80s or older camcorder and showed a karate dojo into which an apparently homeless guy went one evening, who seemed to have some mental issues as he claimed to have learned kung fu from Jesus Iris. At first they seemed to humor him, but then I think he asked to spark the instructor, to which the instructor took offense. The sparring rapidly deteriorated into a beating, ending with the karate guy stomping on the head of the unconscious guy. Several students dragged the now lifeless-looking body through the dojo and out the back door. I was stunned, and feared I'd just watched a real-life snuff movie at my desk on my lunch break at work. The hundreds of later pages in the thread were a matter class in amateur detective work, to the point, again Iris, that the karate guy was found and located, and even members of his family ended up posting in the thread. In the end though, nothing ever came of it as the victim was never found, and nobody was ever found, so no charges were pressed. 13. Not so much went down the rabbit hole willingly but got shoved. A League of Legends friend came out to me as a pedophile, age range of attraction 3 to 4. He confessed every last feeling he had, and I just sat on my headset in complete stunned silence as he explained how he felt trapped because of his attractions, hated himself, wanted to die. I was stupid and didn't try to figure out how to record anything. He claimed he hadn't done anything, but admitted some unsure things that I would not agree with were victimless actions. Stopped talking to him, and his accounts disappeared from my friends lists. Part of me agrees with some frustrations he had with seeking help from professionals, and how many societal blockers we have for someone to get resources to prevent a non-offender from building up to actual action. It just struck me how young he sounded, clearly in college. I still really don't know how to process it. Revulsion and pity is all I can find about how I feel about the conversation. I won't let myself give the token I hope he got the help he needed because I genuinely think that there just aren't the resources out there for that sort of thing, so saying it would feel trite and lack meaning. I haven't played LOL since. The memories are just too real after all these years. Especially when I realized he would always play the characters Annie or Tristana, a child, and a gnomish creature that looks like a child. 14. Man claimed he had a kill house somewhere in Alabama. He said if someone got quads in the thread he'd release Gap's coordinates. Someone did, he followed through. Fast forward, watched a video of someone walking up to said kill house. It was a derelict cabin in the woods, almost falling down. He went inside. In the video saw 4 girls hanging and gutted in multiple body parts in one corner, entrails in another corner. Fast forward, someone posted a clip of a newspaper from Alabama citing 12 dead in a cabin found by a man who used GPS coordinates. Looked up the newspaper, they existed, the same article is on their website. Say they found the bodies of 12 dead girls, all 16 to 27, no idea who the killer was. Fast forward, someone claims to be the killer and says he only showed us the easiest 1-2 finds. The world is weird, bro. My mom was a bailiff for the courts here and it's insane how violent and deranged people are in general. 15. Honestly, finding my great-grandfather's records in a Holocaust victim database. It was relieving in a way to finally find records of his existence, but it was definitely weird looking up his last known address and finding a Meininger hotel there, especially since I stayed in a Meininger in Berlin once. My great-grandfather lived in Vienna. He was an editor, an expert in Greek and Latin, and a huge intellectual just like my grandfather. He was murdered in Auschwitz. I couldn't find his records for years because I was taught the wrong spelling of his name, which makes me kind of angry honestly. One positive aspect is while looking at the Google Street View of the street he used to live on, there was graffiti on one of the buildings that said "No human is illegal" in German. 16. Reading the Wikipedia entry on the massacre of Nanjing. I understand that brutal stuff happens in war and people get a kick out of being violent when they're in a frenzy, but this seemed different. The Japanese troops seem to want to cause as much prolonged harm as possible to the local Chinese population, and the scale of it is impossible to imagine. I'm glad I read about it though. I think it made me come to terms with the fact that if there's a low, humans will sink below it under the right, or wrong, circumstances. It's a shame that the Japanese government denies that it ever happened. Like at least know what you did in the hope that it isn't repeated. 17. I don't know if this is the creepiest, but there was a YouTube channel years ago, I think 2008, but definitely in the OG years of YouTube, ran by a bunch of teenage lifeguards on a military base. Don't ask how or why I was looking for it. It was run by me think 2 girls and 2 guys, all 4 were rather attractive. Again. Don't ask, they would just talk about their job and life on the base until one day they posted a video of them taking a dip in a freezing cold pool and it was the final thing they ever uploaded. I remember reading the comments and someone said they were doing it again in their free time for fun and they ended up getting hypothermia and dying as a result of it, and I even Googled it and found an article about it. I should say, this channel as I said before was from 2008 and I found it in I want to say 2013 or 2014. Definitely one of those 2 years, maybe 2015 at the very latest. I can't remember for the life of me what the channel was called or where the base was at, because I think they mentioned it in one of the videos even though I'm pretty sure that's very illegal, or any of the kids' names, but I definitely remember 2 girls and at least 1 guy, but maybe 2 guys. I remember them all being extremely attractive and one of the girls was Asian. I can't remember if it was some kind of series or ARG, but I definitely remember hearing the story outside of the YouTube comments. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, please reply, and if you remember the name of the channel and if anything happened to them, please tell me so this isn't some weird dream I once had. I'm hoping it was some kind of ARG or series or something and that the kids were all actors that didn't die, or that the hypothermia thing was false, and all those kids are living great lives now. If the hypothermia story is true, then it's incredibly sad and I hope they rest in peace, but at the same time kind of eerie. 18. On my dad's deathbed, not actual deathbed but when we knew he was terminal with only a couple of months left, he started to tell me about the horrors he met in the Nazi-occupied ghetto and what his family went through. He had a lifelong fear of dentists and never told me why. When he was dying he told me he and his sister saw their father's teeth being roughly pulled out while totally awake with no freezing or painkiller. It was because they were sadistic and wanted the gold in the teeth. He cried apologizing to me because I inherited that fear of dentists. I thanked him for sharing and told him I'd find a way to overcome. He died just a few years before the internet started, so within the year of getting online I started researching and reading first-hand testimonies of victims of dental torture. I was soon upset. I found a way to somehow overcome my fear and I shared resources with other adult kids of Holocaust survivors and torture. 19. So, I once read a book series called The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flame. It was extremely cool, so when I got to the end of the first book I had nothing to read since I was sitting on a train. So, I started reading the author's notes at the end, which turned out to be just as exciting as the book. The author, Michael Scott, said that the corpse of Nicholas Flame actually disappeared after he was buried. For context for the people who don't know too much about Flame, he actually lived, but the book is fiction simply based on him. He was an alchemist, but there is this saying that he might have discovered the elixir of life to make you immortal, but for that there is no proof, so yes. Would be crazy. It turns out that when they buried Nicholas Flame after he died, his corpse disappeared. He was rich and apparently some grave robbers wanted the fortunes he was buried with. When they opened the grave and the coffin, though, there was nothing in it, which is just extremely interesting. Here I want to say that I did not fact-check any of it. I just saw that there are multiple articles about that incident on the internet too. And since this is a very mysterious thing, who knows how much truth any of them have. But I hope you all think it's just as cool as I think it is. Also, I am drunk, and English isn't my first language. I hope all the words I used make sense. 20. I'm not from America and so I never really learnt at school what 9/11 was really like. I only knew that it happened, and so one night when I was about 13 I started Googling and reading about it, and I ended up stumbling on a video that included voicemails that the people on the plane sent to their loved ones when they found out that their plane was taken, and that was really disturbing and scary to hear. I had a tougher time falling asleep that night. 21. I was in an online psychology class, because of the pandemic and all, and the teacher made us watch this documentary about a family with 2 schizophrenic children because we were learning about schizophrenia at the time. On the sidebar, I clicked on a video called The Problem with the Schofields by Gray Lighton. There was also another one of the family later on with Dr. Phil, where it said the parents had split up and were arguing about the children. The father has started a new family, and the mother has married a new man that is helping her run a YouTube channel. It's still up, by the way, with the children in all kinds of positions, including on the toilet. Dr. Phil asked if they would take down the video so Bodhi, their son, and Yanni, short for January, their daughter who was older than Bodhi, could get help, and they refused. The most recent thing I've heard about the mother is that she's been arrested, and the children put in foster care, although Yanni, who was 18, opted to go back to her mother. 22. I never knew about my granddad's family. Not a single thing except his mother's first name. Turns out, now 25 years after I first asked, his mother never even told him about his dad. I met his mother when I was small and she apparently left dad and fled to this country, but even so, no matter how bad it is, not to be able to do your own genealogy because your mom says no all the way till her grave is pretty rough. I can trace all my other ancestors to the 1500s, so having one stop there was strange. I think they gave him a fake name as there are no records, but his brother paid for it all to be found out before he died, and I'm being sent his findings. It's still got lost things, but there is a missing child involved and a possible suicide. Not sure I want to open this bag of mysteries when it arrives. 23. Everything on the dark web. For me it was a library I found that released all the unsealed classified files of countries, but the topic was all the illegal and messed up things countries have done to their own population. The crack crisis in America was largely contributed by the USA government, and they are apparently still testing drugs etc., even dangerous ones, on entire cities without their knowledge. There was a pretty messed up file about America absolutely doping it out of an entire city with LSD. 24. There was one night I got really sucked into the story of Kate Yupp. For those who are unfamiliar, Kate Yupp uploaded mukbang videos to YouTube for about 2 years. Her early videos seemed innocent, and nothing was wrong, but her more videos seemed to get increasingly sinister as time went on. Her videos would have mysterious background sounds of zippers and men talking, and her physical condition worsened over time. Bruises and scars appeared, and her teeth started falling out and breaking. In one of her videos the word help is even hidden in the subtitles. A good video to learn more. 25. I came to learn about various frauds running out of India, targeting foreigners. I am going down the rabbit hole to find these scammers have no moral, their devious methods driving victims and even families to suicide and even spy on their victims, plus extortion, and the money mules, Indian police corruptionless. The worst part was when one of the bosses of the fraud seems to be a local politician, who was given VIP security. I felt really done when I came across some scammers who were using the credit cards of Indian victims to fund their frauds. Apart from bribes, busting these frauds is difficult due to lack of victim statement. 26. Religious conversion camps in the USA where children are forced to stay without contact, abused and brainwashed. A girl talked about how they threatened to take you to Jamaica if you wouldn't behave, where you'd be assaulted, and even more violent and disgusting means if you didn't follow their rules. Also, the concentration camps in China, which a Redditor talked about. This person went back to China after a family member texted that it's safe but spent the next few years in a re-education camp. And oh God, I cried for hours after reading that. Then my sister got concerned in Reddit and we both cried / had a sad and helpless mood for a week. 27. Just today, I fell down the abandoned Rust Belt city's rabbit hole. Like Ohio, Gary, Indiana, act. But when I got to Detroit, it blew my mind. No one ever talks about Detroit or its history. I've only heard that it's dangerous and scary, but never why, never how it got that way. So, I made my way through the wiki, subreddit, and did an extensive Google Maps trip during, check out the Packard building if you haven't. I felt it up emotionally. Detroit went from being the 5th biggest city in the US, competing with the likes of LA and New York in 1950s, to a destroyed and abandoned city today with over 70,000 abandoned buildings, 30,000 of them being homes. It's absolutely unreal. And the history of the city is so dug up. The black population migrated from the South, trying to escape Jim Crow laws. But they suffered from so much repeated and blatant systemic racism and destruction of their communities. Even after the Civil Rights Act, white people were forcing segregated schools. White people, and our GOV, totally screwed the city, created a suburban sprawling expansion with absolutely no mass transit to keep low-income earners from jobs, then they totally abandoned it when it started to get dangerous because everyone refused to even acknowledge the decades of deplorable conditions they subjected the black population to. Then white people left, the remaining population couldn't afford taxes and the city went bankrupt. It's a dark, disgustingly correct depiction of just some of the country's systemic racism. Things like this need to be talked about more. 28. If you read into the geopolitics of World War I from non-Wikipedia sources, it gives you an interesting perspective of why the world exists in today's form. What was once Persia, and the Ottoman Empire was cut into pieces and Western civilization was given control of drawing borders and taking copious amounts of natural resources from the newly formed Middle Eastern countries. Again, some of these treaties and accords have been erased from Wikipedia but can be found on other reliable historical sources like Encyclopedia Britannica. 29. The entire incel/red pill/men go their own way brigade is frankly terrifying as a woman. It's hard getting around this world knowing a small but significant percentage of men aren't just misogynists but hate women so much they don't believe that misogyny is real, and as a woman you should be killed. But not because they hate you because you're a woman, because misogyny isn't real/only happening in other countries/equality has been achieved. Knowing they can believe something so violent, so obviously circular, and those views are informing a steady undercurrent is just a bit horrifying. 30. Plane crashes and learning what exactly happened to cause the crashes, whether it be pilot error or a mechanical failure, and learning what caused the failure, usually negligence. I found reading the descriptions of the crashes is so unsettling. Mainly just thinking about what the victims went through in their decisive moments. The one that sticks with me the most is Alaska Airlines Flight 261, where a jack screw failure, caused by poor maintenance, caused the vertical stabilizer, the big back fin on a plane, basically, to fail, which caused the plane to flip upside for a period of time before crashing. Just the thought of being a passenger on that plane. Not only going through a plane crash, but to be, likely, strapped into your seat, hanging upside, as the plane plummets toward the ocean. Completely disorienting and a horrific way to go. 31. Mine would be the strange world of haunted dolls. It all started with Annabelle, and I developed a very deep interest in the occult, studied various religions to understand different demons/spirits and just kept looking. I started realizing a pattern that certain information has been and appears to be actively scrubbed from the internet when I was looking up increasingly obscure dolls. There are truly some things out there that people are so afraid of that I've only ever run across brief mentions, and now cut photos of the dolls. I do not fear much because I look at things with a scientific mindset. However, some of the things I've seen have run chills down my spine, caused horrible nightmares for days afterwards, and had me thinking I was seeing shadows out of the corner of my eyes. It feels wrong to talk about it, and I honestly can't bring myself to give the names of some of the things I've found. Should you go down this rabbit hole, please be respectful of your spirits, trust your instincts, and be ready both spiritually and mentally for whatever tricks they, or your mind will play on you. 32. MK Ultra. There seems to be a whole subculture built up around it of finding any kind of quirky anomalous behavior and attributing it to MK Ultra mind control. Like Katy Perry faints and rather than heatstroke because she's dancing under heavy lights in a latex dress, it's actually a MK Ultra malfunction. It seems like a deeply misogynistic subculture where any attractive celebrity's success must be attributed to some nefarious government plot rather than talent, perseverance, and good luck. Worse still are the people who cosplay as victims of MK Ultra. 33. Creepiest? Probably when me and my best friend wanted to prank our other friend by packing a box full of random memes and dropping it off on our other friend's porch. We made a fake shipping label on Google Docs, and we got a random QR code off of Google. Well, right before we sent the package, my friend accidentally scanned the QR code while taking a picture. It took us to this website in memory of some dead woman and her picture was strange. She has these dead, dull-looking eyes, and an empty smile, and below it had family trees and baby pictures going back all the way to probably the 19th century. We got freaked out and noted out there really quick. 34. The Watts family annihilation case in Colorado. A seemingly normal and happy young father murders his pregnant wife and their 2 baby daughters in 2018, disposes of them brutally at one of his work sites and then begins his shift as if nothing happened. There are so many crazy things about this case, including hours and hours of police body cam videos and interrogation videos. But one of the eeriest parts is that Father Watts is interviewed twice by local news stations while his family is still missing and he is still pretending not to know where they are. He is stiff, his eyes are black, and it's noticeably clear that he is lying. So many different rabbit holes to go down with this one, it took months to break my obsession. 35. My days on 4chan. In my mid-teens, when the internet was in the Middle Ages. When dinosaurs still roamed, and you could hear the call of the dial-up modem through the hills, we would stake unfamiliar territory daily. Well, one fateful day, we wandered too far. Found ourselves in the gore section of 4chan. Dramatic intro aside, I can handle my gore. My uncle was a police officer, I grew up in the military, and I've had a friend or two die in motorcycle crashes that didn't go so well. It doesn't faze me. But the thing that haunts me to this day was a photo. A single photo. A photo of someone's head, being shattered like a glass sphere by a massive metal rod. With a huge smile on their face at that. Still haunts me. 36. Not really a rabbit hole, but I think its name was Deep Blue or Deep G or something like that. Basically, some divers went underwater, and because the pressure is high underwater they had to open some hatch. When they came back up they had to let the pressure settle to land pressure. But they made a fatal mistake. The diver opened the hatch but did not let the pressure settle. So, it killed them. It sucked them through a small hole and sprayed their bodies into what looked like ground beef. All but one diver survived. I think she died shortly after. Do not look this up. You can say you can stomach it, but you won't. You will be scared for months. Just take my word for it. I didn't supply enough details, so if you know more paste it below. 37. The Schuyler Niece murder. When I was in high school, I've since moved away, my mom and I got an apartment at a discount because the landlord couldn't rent it. Why couldn't he rent it? It was the last place Schuyler Niece lived before she was murdered by her best friends in 2012. They went out, probably to go smoke weed over the PA border, and her 2 best friends stabbed her to death, hid her body, and then helped look for her. What's even more unsettling is, as of 2016, all of their social media are accessible. So, I wound up looking through the Twitter accounts of a murder victim and her 2 killers while sitting in my bedroom in her old house. 38. For some reason when I was an edgy teenager, that was probably the reason, yes, I kept looking at videos of people dying in the most horrific and graphic ways. Think of chainsaw executions and tour bus collisions. But the thing that got me away for good was a video of a girl who was hit by truck, which probably had driven over her, basically cutting her in half at the waist. The video was just her, with her lower body a few feet away from her, crying while being comforted by her mother and dozens of people swarming around. I can never get the scene out of my head. The sight of the poor girl. The hopeless wails of the mother. God. I had definitely dug too far. 39. This is probably weirder than disturbing, but I remember once stumbling on a Tumblr page with girls that fetishized losing as much weight as possible and starving oneself. It had posts to the tune of "You don't need to eat. Shrink those wrists, ankles, and waist, I can't see your ribs." It was almost BDSM language demanding one starve themselves. There were regular posts of girls celebrating how little they ate, and one was proud that they only ate 5 blueberries that day and planned the same for tomorrow. There were grotesque pictures of skeleton sequel girls' bodies with heart eye emojis in the notes, praising each other for how well defined their ribs and pelvis bones stuck out. I was left stunned and kept thinking about it for days afterward. 40. The aftermath of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. People were so severely burnt and instantly traumatized that a decent chunk of the survivors all walked right into a river to soothe their burns that a lot of people drowned. There's also Hisashi Aoki, a Japanese nuclear plant technician who was accidentally irradiated and was kept alive against his will for 80-some days so scientists could see the effects of radioactivity on the human body. It's been said he cried and begged for mercy in death whenever he was revived. There are pictures of him post-radiation if you want a good dose of nightmare fuel. 41. Sylvia Likens. She was tortured and murdered by her caregiver, Gertrude Lazuski. Gertrude's kids and other neighboring kids also took part in torturing Likens. All the while Likens' sister could only watch and even was forced to take part as her sister was beaten. They all had relatively light sentences since they were kids. Gertrude served 20 years. This lady literally looked like a witch, especially the photo taken just after her release from prison in 1985.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.